We'll move now to the 2024 annual report, public input session. Ms. Wood, are there any written submissions received about the annual report?
Your Worship, there are no written submissions received.
Thank you. So I'll call for a first time from anyone in the gallery who would like to speak to the 2024 annual report. Welcome. Welcome. Come on to the podium. Give us your name and address and your views.
Barry Beardsell, 2201 28th Avenue. The first item I'd like to address is the sewer. And the reason is that the sewer reserves in January 21 were $20 million. In 2025, they had reduced down to $96,000. But of course, to make this appropriate for the 2024 annual report, I have to tell you that at that point, it was $4.9 million, even though the 2005 budget shows $4 million. So there's some discrepancy in the numbers, but that's understandable. But anyway, the key thing is 20 million reduced down that much. So we have got problems with the sewer. Now, urban systems, when they did things, the study, they said that the one that benefited should pay all of the costs. You haven't done that. They suggested that Okanagan Springs pay the entire amount. But what has happened is that everything has got away from you, and you've not paid enough attention to it. The annual operating costs of the one facility that was put in is now $550,000. The total charged to Spring Brewery in 2003 was something like $650,000. But that leaves $13 million of money that was expended on strictly Okanagan Springs by way of the line from the brewery to the treatment facility at the reclamation plant. Now, obviously, $13 million, if you tried to amortize that over 15 years even, and let's face it, that add-on has a limited facility, that would be $1,154,000 a year. So you've not only got that $1,100,000, you've got the $550,000 to operate that specific facility, and all for the benefit of Okanagan Springs. Now, Okanagan Springs put their facility in Guelph, Ontario, on their own property and did it themselves. But no, you've given a benefit to a taxpayer which is not allowed unless you get special dispensation or give special dispensation. As far as I'm aware, you did not do that. Did you? No, I don't think so. So that is my problem with the sewer facility. And I expect some answers on it and some response from council as to what you're going to do. The next thing I'd like to question is the Active Living Center. In February 24, you went in camera and ended up totally in camera, discussing things, and I think it probably took all morning. And I don't know why you went in camera. You have to give a reason, but you didn't give a reason. And then, when you brought it out of in camera, the only part you brought out was the addition of $15 million. Now, I don't know, and I don't know if you know, whether the $15 million was strictly for the add-ons or was an increase in the price of the project, or a combination of both. But at least we should know that. After having gone to a referendum, to do that in camera and to hide it is totally irresponsible. The next thing I would like to say is on the budget. Why, with the capital projects, why in this annual report can you not show what capital projects were done and what the cost of them was? In other words, a comparison to the original budget and to the actual costs that incurred. Because every year you come up with a great big surplus and you use it as a slush fund. And that is inappropriate, especially with today's taxes and the kind of tax rates that you are levying. Your tax rates are just out of question. And I mean, you're obviously going ahead for the coming year of expecting a minimum of 7% increase. And that's highly unacceptable. I mean, we've just been through a tremendous increase. I calculated my own increase in taxation for 2025 as 14.4%. Now you might say, where did I go wrong in getting 14% as opposed to 11% that you suggested that we do? Well, the additional percentage is what we pay the regional district for strictly Greater Vernon purposes on parks and recreation. So really, last year's increase was 14.4%, because my house is about the average. So I think you better smarten up and do things a little differently. When you want these increases, you've got to start saying, what's our existing budget, and start reducing it. Getting staff to come in with, say, a 0% budget before you do the add-ons. No, instead, you give them 6 or 7% to start with. That's highly inappropriate. And last, I would just tell you that as far as interest rates, you know, we borrowed the first 31 million for the active living center. Well, that interest rate, I think, was 3.23%. You know, so it is up there. And of course, future borrowings may be at greater rates than that. Anyway, I think that really covers what I wanted to say. But the thing is, will you respond for a change, or will you just brush it under the rug?
Thank you, Mr. Beardsell. Much appreciated. As in the past, we will respond to your comments. So I'll call for a second time. For anybody from the public wishing to make a presentation regarding the 2024 annual report. Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Council, Don Tucker, would you like the address again? 3006 Gateby Place here in Vernon. I'm not going to touch on too much. I will note that I think that this sewer item that Mr. Beardsell has brought up has been brought up by myself and a couple of other people, as well as Mr. Beardsell, about 4 or 5 times at Council, just so that Council is aware. I would like a question, and perhaps staff can answer this question. I noted in the report, there's a section on page, just find it here again. I think it is page 60. Is it 7 or 8? I think it's page 68. It talks about page 68 has a section that talks about natural gas system revenue, and yet every section is blank from 2020 to 2024. And I'm just wondering if we're expecting natural gas system revenue and why that's listed there if we're not. And that is obviously different than the legacy funds, because the natural gas system lease legacy is listed different in a different section. So I'm just wondering why that line is there if we aren't expecting that, or what that happens to be referring to.
We will provide you with an answer to that question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
So I'll call for a third and final time for anyone from the public wishing to provide comment on the 2024 annual report.
Again, just with a couple of points. Number one, the reservoir property. Can you update the public as to where it stands? The court case was quite some time ago. Everything seems shrouded in mystery, and I think it's about time we learn what has happened, especially in light of so-called affordable housing and so forth on the agenda. Then we need to know that. Secondly, the RCMP building, I think we also need to know how that study is going and what may be the implications in the future. And third, I would like to ask whether Councillor Quiring is still conflict of interest as far as the active living centre, or is not in conflict, because right up to the time of the referendum and so forth, he declared conflict of interest. So I'd like to know what really is happening there. Sure.
Councillor Quorum?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Barry. So we were on a team with another architect pursuing the active living center. And so all of the preliminary work that went into the active living center up into the referendum, I declared a conflict on, and then we were unsuccessful. So after we were unsuccessful, then I could no longer declare a conflict because I had no pecuniary interest. So we don't have any involvement in the project. Yeah.
No, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor. So, seeing no one else approach the podium, I will